It's May 2021, and you're watching The Lookout, a production of the Division of World Languages and Cultural Studies here at Minot State University. I'm your host, Samuel Stinson. On board, we also have our co-host, Robert Kibler. And today we're talking with Libby Claerbout. Libby Claerbout is the Director of International Programs here at Minot State University. Libby Claerbout, thank you again for being on the program today.
Thanks for having me.
COVID, what impact has COVID had on your work with international programs during the last year?
Well, COVID has basically dominated everything that we do in my world for the past year. At Minot State, the International Programs Department works with both international students who are on F1 status here studying in the US and study abroad programs. And that includes individuals who are wanting to go on study abroad programs for longer terms, like semester, academic year, or even several weeks in the summer, but also faculty-led programs. So that's kind of I could give you a very long answer of how COVID in general has affected us. But I think I'll just start with, when COVID was first kind of being talked about in January and February, it was the study abroad side of things that really picked up on the issue first, because we had students in other, locations around the world. And I was actually on spring break myself in Mexico when things really started getting heated up in the world with, pulling study abroad participants back. A lot of US institutions were shutting down their study abroad programs and pulling people back home. And that process started when I myself was in Mexico. So things got very kind of panicky right away at the end of February, beginning of March. And then everything just kind of, snowballed from there.
So how have the students been dealing with COVID in your experience with the office? You'd mentioned that there's multiple populations of students that you deal with.
Yeah, so study abroad, as I was just mentioning, basically just kind of everything shut down. And so people were being pulled back home. Those students it was just a handful of our students that were in that situation, but they were very quickly being evacuated. And then they had to switch gears to, finishing up their academics online so that they didn't just lose their entire semester of work by having to leave their programs halfway through. Now, the other major populations that we work with, international students, they can also be kind of split up into two separate subgroups. We've got the Canadian students who are in a very different situation from the kind of international overseas students. And for the most part, Canadians back in March went home. They had the option to be with their families, and we kind of, from our perspective, we basically encourage them. If you need to go be with your families now, go do it. And then the international students from overseas, their options to do that were a little bit more limited. International travel had more restrictions, more barriers, and also the cost of it. So for the most part, a lot of our true international students were just weathering the storm on lockdown, either in the residence halls or here in Minot. We did have a lot of people also go to different parts of the US to, be with family during lockdown. The US government was actually pretty quick in responding to the pandemic in terms of the F1 student visa regulations. They can be very strict. So international students have to abide by certain rules in order to stay in status and good standing with the government while they're here in the US. And one of them is called the physical presence requirement. And the way that you can kind of understand this is the government wants to basically know where you are as an international student. And so you are required to be physically inside a classroom where your instructors can see you and touch you and can vouch, yes, I've seen Alex, every day of this or every week of this semester, basically. Well, when we're all locked down and doing distance learning or online classes, it's impossible to maintain those physical presence requirements. So the government responded and loosened those regulations up, um, basically allowing for students to take online courses beyond what is normally the minimum or the maximum required.
I've known you really since you came here for the job, and I know you're from here originally. And I was on the search committee because, Ruth Kim and I, you may remember, started study abroad programs, the Horizons Unlimited. And we very quickly, despite going to many places, realized that we were way, way over our head. And we needed some real person running the international programs rather than us. So we did the search. And you got hired. And I remember reading that you actually went to university, like American University, to study international relations. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about why, coming from Minot, North Dakota, this international vision was part of you from early on, and what it actually meant to major in international studies or travel programs.
That's a really good question. I think that we have to remember that when I was born and raised in Minot, North Dakota, graduated in the 90s, and back then, pre-internet, things were much more isolated than they are now. And so I feel like I had this desire to just learn about the world and see other things and experience a little bit more than what I think, the internet nowadays and travel, like people just have so much more access to different languages, different cultures, different, ideas than what we did back then. So when I was in high school, my mom said, "Oh, you should study Spanish." So I said, "All right, I'm going to study French," which, looking back on it, maybe Spanish is a little bit more useful in the world or in the world that we live in, I think. But French is just so beautiful, and I just fell in love with the language. And so I did a study abroad program in France my sophomore year in college for a semester, and I was hooked. I became what I call a serial study abroad participant or serial traveler. And I ended up going back to France for 3 different programs. And when I went to graduate school, I graduated with a French BA. And all I knew is that I wanted to keep traveling. I wanted to be able to talk about different parts of the world every day. Like, that was my dream job, was to be able to interact with people from around the world every day. And I was lucky enough to be able to come to Minot and be able to still do that. So I've got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, very, very exciting. And that's I lived in China for a while, and I took the Trans-Siberian Express all the way around. And when I landed in England, it was like late at night, and I stayed in bed and breakfast. And the woman asked me, "So where are you coming from anyway?" And that's the first time it dawned. Well, China, other side of the world. Oh, she says, "Oh, you're hooked now, aren't you?" I go, "What do you mean?" She says, "Oh, a trip like that, you get the travel in your blood. It'll take all your money, all your time." And I'd not thought of it in that negative light before, and probably neither have you, because you're still at it. Yeah.
I saw on the program page Costa Rica. Oh, wow, Costa Rica. This sounds like a lovely place to visit. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how folks could get involved with that travel?
Yeah, so Costa Rica was actually one of the programs that we had to postpone because of the pandemic. I started working with Becky Daniel from the social work department and Anna Dykman, Lutheran Campus Ministries, on a service learning program in Costa Rica. Gosh, in 2019, we started talking about it, and it was set to go in 2020 of May of 2020. And we had 18 people signed up for the experience. And we just had to, put the brakes on it. And we decided May of 2022, we're going to relaunch it. We still have 10 people, 10 of the original people that signed up to go on the program are still, able to go. Others have graduated or they've transferred out to other institutions. But this is going to be, a really great opportunity for students to just explore a different culture. We thought it would be a good location because it's relatively safe. It is another language. They've got good weather in Costa Rica. They're known for their beautiful diversity. And Robert, something else that you had said earlier about how when you and Ruth Kim hired on this position that I'm in was because you felt like you were in over your heads and there was so much that goes into planning these programs. Well, I have decided that we are working with educational providers for even faculty-led programs because it's even above me. There's so much that goes into building these programs.
I noted what you said about horizons expanding and the trips I've taken and people who went for a good time and yet came back from these trips thinking about graduate school and thinking about, life from just a bigger vantage altogether. And that's where I saw very vividly the value of these programs. But I wonder if you couldn't talk about how many places have people gone from Minot State? Where have people gone to?
They can basically go wherever as long as it's safe. But we have, when I say that to students, they get very overwhelmed. It's almost like decision fatigue. And so we've developed, my office and our study abroad coordinator, we've developed what we call a featured programs list. So we've narrowed it down to locations that are safe and affordable and that offer academics that match up fairly well with what we offer here at Minot State. And on those featured programs list, we have Spain, Norway, Sweden. Our program in Sweden, I just love it. I think if I could pick a favorite one, it would be the program in Sweden, just because they offer such great extracurricular activities and support. We've got programs in South Korea, Thailand, Australia, New Zealand. Did I say Costa Rica already? Peru. And like I said, those are programs, England, that we've identified just to kind of help narrow it down, but students still can choose from the full catalog of the program providers that we work with. There's also a program called Semester at Sea that that would be my favorite program because it stops over the course of a semester. It stops in 20 different ports. And students take 4 classes throughout the semester, and each faculty member has to do 3 on the ground experiences. And then they have to compare and contrast the subject matter, how that subject is viewed in these different countries. So it's kind of the most comprehensive comparative education study abroad program that exists out there.
Yeah, I know that, I would add to that list, I through your auspices, I took students to China 3 times. We went to Africa and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and then went out on safari and a whole bunch of the sort of general purpose, Paris, Rome, Athens kind of trips. And I know I've got a whole bunch of stories that stick out for me of unexpected or just really memorable events that have occurred on those trips. And you also take these international students around to experience North Dakota too, don't you? I know you've gone to a couple, didn't you bring them to the berry farm to do the corn maze and stuff like that?
Yeah, so our office has kind of transitioned away from a lot of those support activities because we have such a great student activities office now that basically does all of those things for all students.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and but we would we would go bowling with students. We would take them to Berry Acres. For a couple of years, we bused a bunch of students to Grand Forks for their Feast of Nations. But one of the reasons why we've kind of transferred away from that is because it's been like just university policies are harder for us to be able to transport people from place to place. But Erin Hughes, when student activities, does a really amazing job.
Oh yeah, she's a dynamo, and I'm really glad that they're taking international students under the wing. And I guess I was pointing to the fact that there's more to having international students here than just bringing them here. You can't just bring them and drop them. And so I really appreciate that your office was doing more to make sure that they had a good cultural experience, but a memory. Can you think of one? And you've traveled a lot through your own office, just as you dreamed. I saw photos of you in Norway a few months back, or skiing, Norway, wasn't it? Didn't you go out there for that? Yeah. What a job to be able to travel around the world and make connections for more people to travel around the world. But what's a good memory you have of something for students or with students that really sticks out for you?
Well, I'll just preface it by saying that something that I'm proud of Minot State as an institution is that, when we were doing a lot more of those hands-on activities with international students, we were able to do it because we only had 25 international students from overseas at that time. And then throughout the years, our numbers just have grown with, all of the initiatives at Enrollment Services. They had an international recruiter. They have admission specialists that really help a lot with the application process and, getting students here and interested in answering those inquiries. And then we've had the flat rate tuition. So international students pay the same tuition that everybody pays here at Minot State. So that's really attractive, and it makes it affordable. So, we jumped from 25 international students up to, 200 over a matter of a couple of years. And at that point, it was really cool because the international office was kind of the one-stop shop up until that point for everything international students needed. But then our campus culture changed, and international students started being treated just as students, and they were being folded into these engagement opportunities with SGA and clubs and student activities. They were given leadership positions within the residence halls, and there's so many opportunities. And if you see, just our SGA, so many of those students are international students, and a lot of these award events that are happening right now, a lot of the students that are being awarded are international students. So our office has kind of shifted away from offering all of that to our campus now, just as is equipped to work with diverse populations, which that's probably one of the things that I'm the most proud about, is that the culture at Minot State has become much more open and sophisticated in working with people from a wide varieties of locations.
Yeah, that's so exciting to me to even hear you speak like this. And we mentioned earlier about when Ruth and I felt overwhelmed, and I'm so glad that you're feeling overwhelmed too. Almost like it's another whole level of international engagement we're getting to, where maybe there need to be 2 or 3 Libby Claerbouts here to manage things. Exciting.
Well, we work with, on the flip side again with study abroad, we work with these program providers that are basically the experts in their content area. So, I am not able to meet with a student who says, I want to study communication disorders in Thailand. Help me do it. But I'm knowledgeable enough to say, oh, well, our partner that works in Thailand has these program specialists that you can chat with, or you can send an email to, or you can call them, and they'll be able to identify the exact location and the exact semester and the exact classes that you can take. So I've strategically partnered with these program providers that have that specialty or specialization, that they're able to provide our students with, that much more service. And then I'm here to help them with like the Minot State side of things. Like, how do you get your financial aid to study abroad? How do you get credit for the classes you're taking abroad to apply for your degree program here? You're freaking out about your packing list. Let's sit down and talk about this. So I take care of the things kind of that I can here on the ground, and then our partners are able to focus on like the actual program details.
So Libby, if I could ask one more question about local students who are interested in studying abroad, who are interested in international travel and study, what do they have to do in order to get that process started? Let's say I'm a student, I'm local, and I say, I want to go overseas, I want to travel. Do I get what do I start with in terms of paperwork, credentials? Where would you send that person to start off with?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say is to start the conversation as soon as possible. So, if somebody's coming in as a freshman, like during their orientation, the first thing I say is, well, talk to your academic advisor and find the best time to go abroad. There's a lot of majors where there's a lot of flexibility in the classes that you're going to take, throughout your time as a Minot State student. But there are also a lot of majors where classes are offered on rotations, like every couple of years during a specific semester, or like communication disorders, nursing, and education. They go through and they take classes in a very specific order. So identifying the best semester or the best term, maybe it's going to be a summer program that they choose, is going to be the first thing that they want to do. And then after that, we have a really comprehensive website. So it's minotstateu.edu/international. And we've got all of our program options listed. Featured programs are featured, more highly so that we don't overwhelm people. And then, people can just kind of click around on our website and look at if they've got a specific destination, like if they really want to go to France, they can click around on the France options. If they really want to go and just study, I just want to study Spanish language, then they can go and they can see, well, what are my options in Spanish speaking destinations? So it's a lot of just kind of looking around and familiarizing themselves on the website with what the options are. And then, like I said, speaking with those program advisors and really honing in on the program that they want. Students have to be sophomore status in order to be eligible, and they need to have a 2.5 GPA. I always like to say that, it is, even though it's fun and it's life-changing, it's study abroad, not party abroad. So there's a lot of academic rigor to the programs and expectations. And then the application is all on our website. It's really easy.
So that was minotstateu.edu/international?
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, we hope you get a lot of applicants in terms of folks coming out of the pandemic. It sounds like a great experience, especially upcoming 2022 I saw with Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I bet you shouldn't get that T-shirt. Minot State University study abroad, not party abroad. It probably ought to be a little fun with it too. Not so school marmish. Study.
Well, somebody's kind of got to be the.
Somebody's got to be it. Maybe I guess that's you then, wasn't it?
Yeah. I don't think people have any problems having fun abroad, so they just need to be reminded every once in a while.
Libby Claerbout, thank you so much for helping us out today and being on the program. We really appreciate you coming and talking more about these possible future experiences that students can get involved in. And of course, international students who are here and who are already involved.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, we've reached that time in the program again where we have to bid you adieu. But thank you again for watching this episode of The Lookout, and have a good summer. We'll plan to see you after the break. As we say at this point in the program again, this is Minot State University. Be seen, be heard, be inspired. And thank you again for watching.